Hey guys, by now you know I broke my ankle and I had to go to the doctors, but I recorded this for you because we're in a time crunch. We have to get this done. It's the last week of school and I'm going to count this as an assessment grade. So I wanted you guys to understand what was going on. So right now everybody sit up, pay attention. I don't want to see any heads down. And yes, I can tell that some of your heads are down. And please don't interrupt me while I'm talking. And also, please be on your best behavior. I don't want anybody to get in trouble because that would just give me more stress. And with a broken ankle, I really don't need that. So here we go. Last week, Mr. Malberg came in and he talked about the different kinds of economies. If you look at your graphic organizer, please make sure your name's on the top, by the way. Put the date down. It's 6/11/2018. I'll give you 5 seconds to do that. All right. So if you take a look at your graphic organizer, at the top it says, who answers the three economic questions of what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom is it produced? We talked about produce. Produce means to make. And who makes things? Manufacturers. Well, on this side, you have the government. When the government makes the decisions, we call that a pure command economy. Most people don't say pure, but you should know that. Really, they call it just a command economy. It's basically the government saying what should be produced, how do we produce it, and who gets it, right? So it has complete government control. On the other side, if the buyers and sellers are saying, what is going to be produced, how is it going to be produced, and who is going to produce it, then we call that a market economy. And there's no government control. But really, in this day and age, we have something called a mixed economy. This is where there's a little bit of government say and a whole lot of buyers and sellers say, or opposite, depending on which country you are from. So I want you to scroll down, or I'm scrolling down. You turn to the next page. What do we call this page? Yes, the notes page. So let's take a look at the notes. It says Big Ideas of Lesson 2, Unit 6, which is about economics. So let's take a look at the first bullet point, everybody. So it says all societies have to answer the three main economic questions. And you need to know these three questions. What to produce, how to produce, and who should get what is produced. Okay, so whatever I highlight, you underline or circle, whatever you like to do. So you need to know those three questions. Now, the second bullet point, different types of economic systems results when different groups of people have the power and authority to answer the three main economic questions. Next, command system. The economic questions are answered by the government. You need to remember that. In a command system, think of it this way. The government makes the commands. They say what is going to happen. Okay? In a market system, next one. So in a market system, the economic questions are answered by the buyers and sellers. Think of you going to the market. You're the buyer. You're going to buy something from the seller. That's a market system. Okay? Most countries today have a mixed economy or a mixed economic system, okay? Which means parts of the economy is driven by the interactions of buyers and sellers and is controlled by the government. We have to have some government regulations. Why? Because if we didn't, well, people would sell whatever they wanted. It might not be up to code. It might harm others. So it's good to have, some government involvement. Next, not all mixed economic systems are the same, so they're not all the same. They differ in the amount of power and authority the government has over the economy. Think about it this way. In the United States, the buyers and sellers are the ones driving the market more, okay? So it's more of a market system. I like to call it a mixed market system. But let's say in China, the government tends to have more of a say. So I like to call it a mixed command system. Does everyone understand that? So it depends on the amount of power and authority, let's just highlight that, the government has over the economy. And last but not least, When I was in school and I was in my economics class, this was my favorite part of economics. It was opportunity cost. What is the cost to the consumer? We all have to make decisions. Remember I talked about budgeting? Well, when we budget, we can't buy everything that we want. So opportunity cost is what a consumer chooses not to buy. You have to make a choice. Let's say I have $1, right? Or Tony has $1. Tony chose to buy pencils instead of a candy bar. He only had $1 and he had to make a choice. Do I really need the candy bar or do I need the pencil? And Tony made the right choice. He needed a pencil for class, so he bought the pencil. So what is the opportunity cost here? The candy bar is the opportunity cost because he chose not to buy that. Does that make sense? Let's give another example. So Mrs. Obeid had to buy a car, let's say. She chose to buy a Ford instead of a BMW. What is the opportunity cost, class? Yes, the BMW, because I chose the Ford over the BMW because it was probably more affordable. All right, so right now we went over the notes. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and our guest teacher today, our lovely guest teacher today, will answer your question. If you don't have any questions, let's scroll down, and I want you to answer this question. Just in 2 to 3 sentences, tell me, what did you learn about economic systems? I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write it down. What did you learn about economic systems? While you are doing that, I'll also write my answer down so you can have a look. I'm going to fix that. Opportunity cost is what the buyer chooses not to buy. Okay, so let's review that. You guys should have wrote down, and if you didn't, please write this down because you're going to need it in your notes. You should have wrote down what a command economy was, and I put down that it has more government control. A market economy is driven by buyers and sellers. We also call them producers and consumers. You know that. 3, most economic systems today are mixed. It just depends on how much government control there is, whether it's a mixed command or a mixed market. It could also be traditional. You learned about traditional, but let's not focus on that right now. Traditional is when, what class? When you do what your, ancestors have done. If your father was a farmer, then you would be a farmer, your kids would be a farmer. Yes, so let's just focus on command and market economies right now. And then finally, opportunity cost is what the buyer chooses not to buy. It's a choice. Okay? All right, turn to the next page. We're going to go over vocab. Okay, so by now you should have turned over to the next page, and you know that these are your word cards. You know what a command economy is. I like that they give you an example. In a command economy, prices are set by the government. In a market economy, look at the example. Prices are set when sellers and buyers agree on the price for a good or service. Remember, we talked about supply and demand. I don't know if we wrote this down or not. I can't remember. But remember, when demand is high, there's more of a need for it, so prices go up. When demand is down, there's not a need for it, prices go down. So it depends on supply too. If there's a lot of something and there's no demand for it, price goes down. But if there's like not a lot of something, let's say an iPhone, they only make 100 iPhones, right? But 1,000 people want the iPhone. What happens to demand? Goes up. What happens to price? Goes way up because people are willing to buy it. All right, so again, that was just a quick supply and demand lesson. Then you have something called a circular flow. We're going to go over that probably tomorrow. I don't think you'll have time today, but you need to know circular flow is the pattern in which goods and services and resources flow in the marketplace. Okay, just in a circular flow model, you can see how money travels from people to businesses and back to people again. This is going to be on the M step. Every year they put the circular flow, they put a chart up there, and you need to know that. So tomorrow I want you to pay very close attention to our lesson on the circular flow model. Then we talk about a mixed economy, which is a combination of command and market economies. And scrolling down, monopoly. And no, we're not talking about the game Monopoly, but you know, it has some influence on that. A monopoly is when one company has control over like everything. They have control over the market. So, example, the company had a monopoly on tires, so it could set the prices high and did not have to worry about competition. Currently, today, our government has made sure to make sure that companies are not a monopoly. They can't have a monopoly because if they have all the, let's say, power and they only make this one thing, well, they can set the prices really high, and that's not fair to the consumer. And then regulations, a government rule with the force of law that states what may or may not be done or how something must be done. Example, many government regulations are aimed at protecting the health and safety of consumers. That's why they're looking at products and putting regulations down so consumers or the buyers don't get sick, don't hurt themselves. Remember the recall on all the airbags? There's regulations on airbags. If they don't fit the regulations, then we have to recall them so that people don't get hurt or die. All right, turn to the next page. You got an activity to do. Okay, so by now you turn to the next page. I want you to compare comparing command and market economies. So it says here, directions. Read each of the following characteristics and decide whether they describe a command or market economy and place an X in the correct box on the chart. So let's do the first two together, and then I'll give you about 2 minutes to finish the rest on your own. So letter A, there is a great amount of economic freedom. If you have economic freedom, is that a command or a market economy? Class? I hope you all said a market economy. So we're going to put our X in there, right? All right, letter B. The number of a certain kind of good produced, like t-shirts or shirts, is determined by the government. What do you guys think? Is it command or is it market? All right, I hope you guys said command because the key word was government. You see that? There we go. Now, I'm going to give you probably less than 2 minutes. This shouldn't take you long. You have 1 minute in silence and by yourselves to get letters C through L done, and then we'll go over it together. Ready and go. Okay, guys, by now you should be practically done with that. There's a question at the end I want you to answer. Over the last 50 years, some countries that had a command economy have moved toward creating a market economy. Why do you think this is true? Why do you think those governments have, let buyers and sellers take over the market? Why would that happen? So go ahead, answer that question. You may turn and talk with a partner to answer that question only, but you get like 30